Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. So, few minutes to go. I see Dev Kusum already logged in. Dev Kusum, hello.
Dr. Kumar, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. What about Professor Goldar? Are you there? And Vinish, maybe joining in a few minutes.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Nagesh.
Hello, Vinish. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, I was just checking whether you were on board.
Okay.
How have you been?
Yeah, fine.
Good. So, IIT Bombay, you're working from home or from
Now
office?
coming to the office every
Okay.
day. Yeah. But still online. Most of the things are online.
Yes. I think gradually all IITs are opening up.
Yeah. IIT Delhi has planned and IIT Kanpur also.
Yes. Very good.
How are you otherwise?
I'm all right, except for the past few days, I suffered from some kind of a seasonal flu.
Oh, okay.
But I'm coming out of it. So today there is no fever. So yeah, so it should be okay. I mean,
How are you?
Fine, Vinish. How are you?
Fine.
So now it's 3 o'clock. Shall we begin? Is everyone there? Goldar sir?
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh, excellent. So, friends, welcome to this latest in our series of seminars. And this is on very important theme of productivity growth in India's organized manufacturing sector. And we know that in a globally interconnected world, productivity and competitiveness of any country's manufacturing industry are very critical for survival. So productivity growth has to be a constant, target for the companies, enterprises, and firms, and similarly competitiveness, and they all are also interrelated. A firm would be competitive only when it has had a good productivity growth, particularly the total factor productivity growth, which is kind of a residual in economic terms, but it helps to earn more than what the firm is putting in. And that has been a subject which many of India's economists have been over time elaborating on, working on, and including Professor Goldar, who will be speaking today. So he has done a lot of work over the years on understanding productivity growth in India and what factors impinge on it. And others, Professor Dev Kusum Das, who has also followed Professor Goldar's work in, and expanded it further, and he's, also chairperson of Asia CLAMS currently. And then Professor Vinish Katuria, he has looked at the, foreign determinants of productivity growth in India. So we have very knowledgeable, panelists today, and they would be, following after two of my colleagues who have prepared the paper on productivity growth in India's organized sector, Dr. Rama Arun Kumar and Dr. on the floor to present. And then I would follow up by inviting Professor Goldar to make his comments and remarks. Then, Professor Dev Kusum Das and Professor Virish Kathuria. And then we will open it up for open discussion with all of you. So with that few remarks to get it started, I want to ask Rama and Mahua to share their presentation. Over to you, Rama.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
And how much time do you plan to take?
Sir, 25 to 30 minutes.
All right. Go ahead.
Is our screen visible?
Yes, it is very much visible.
The PPT?
Yeah.
At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Nagesh Kumar, our director, for his motivation and encouragement to present our work. And thank you for all the panelists who have agreed to scrutinize our research paper. I'm sure your insights would enable deeper understanding for us on this topic, which is the industry level productivity growth under market imperfections. Some insights from organized manufacturing sector in India. This has been a collaborative work with my very learned colleague, Dr. Kumar Pal, who has not only worked but also encouraged and pushed me to finish the paper so that we can put it on record for comments. So I would be making part of the presentation and would call upon Dr. Mahua later on. So starting with the introduction, total factor productivity growth has already been mentioned by Dr. Nagesh. It can play a very effective role in accelerating economic growth and of an economy through rapid technical changes, adoption to open trade policies, innovation, scale economies, etc. However, in case of India, we know that the manufacturing sector has remained stagnated in terms of GDP contribution. This phenomenon has not been fully realized in the case of Indian manufacturing sector. So we look at the productivity trends for the organized manufacturing in America. The conventional TFP measures, which we have seen over a period of time, the basic assumption of these measures is that it assumes perfect competition. However, in many industries, there is a presence of market power, and whereby the firms wield market power in seeking rents. So there is an element of market imperfection present in the industry, which renders the conventional TFP measures to some sort of weakens the representation of productivity if we ignore this fact. Imperfection is also as well as in the product market, also in the labor market, and thereby these imperfections in both these markets influence the levels of total factor productivity at industry level, which we have explored in this paper. So, just to give a background, we are aware of the Solo's residual method of calculating TFP growth, which is basically the real value added growth, and it captures that portion after taking account of the capital growth and labor portion. So what we get is the Solo's residual. However, the residual is based on the assumption calculations on the constant returns to scale, which means homogeneity of degree 1, and perfect competition, where the price markup, the price is equal to the marginal cost, whereby market power doesn't exist, price markup is less. However, the pioneering discussions which took place in late 1980s found that prices in several US industries was much higher than the marginal cost. And in the pioneering study by Robert E. Hall in 1988, it was found that the twin assumptions of constant returns to scale and perfect competition did not hold for several industries where Solo residual model was considered. And thereby the discussion on the impact of imperfect competition assumption in estimating Solo residual took place, where a lot of papers or literature is available, which look at the imperfection in the product market. However, subsequently, so there are papers by Levinson, 1993, Harrison, 1994, Collins, 2005, and many others who have looked at the product market imperfections in calculating the TFP. Subsequently, the role of market imperfections in the labor market have also been studied. So the literature is there for a lot of countries, for example, Abraham, who look at the French manufacturing. Gobelier has had many papers on Belgian manufacturing. Our own Indian manufacturing has been looked at by Paul Rathod in 2014, Methi in 2013. We have also looked at in very preliminary stages in 2019. So there are a lot of literature which has looked at the measures of the imperfections in both labor and product market in calculating the TFP. So I'll just explain the theoretical model on which our analysis is based, and then go to the empirical estimations of how we have dealt with and what we have found in our study. So we are talking about the assumptions of imperfect product market and imperfect labor market. So imperfect product market relates to the size of the rent, and imperfect labor market relates to the distribution of that. So as a firm, a manufacturer would want to maximize the size of the rent, and as a labor or the input would try to maximize the portion of the rent that it costs. So this is there is a dynamics running behind, and that basically affects the productivity estimates, as we would see. So in order to explain the trajectory of how it affects the productivity, we've just taken an example to explain a change in the competitive level of market competition, how it affects the productivity through these two effects. So suppose there is an increase in the element of competition in the markets, say due to open trade policies or deregulation, which has happened in many countries over the years. The product market gets affected through the institutional effect of fall in the prices. And as increase in competition happens, prices fall. This leads to fall in markup, and therefore the producers gain. This leads to the effect on TFP through the fall in productivity. The same increase in competition in the labor market leads to a decline in the market share of domestic firms, whereby the bargaining power falls in the labor market, and therefore the firm's profitability increases and leads to a rise in productivity. So it is the interplay of these two effects which actually determines the level of or influences the conventional method of calculating labor. Now, in terms of objective, our objective main was to assess the productivity performance of Indian organized manufacturing sector in the post-financial crisis era from 2008-9 to 2017-18, taking into account market interventions. Second, the measures of the extent of bargaining power and markup, which the theory or the derivations, as we would see in very short span, shortly in the slides following, we could calculate the extent of bargaining power and markup at the sectoral or the industry level, industry group level. The third, the phase 2 of this study tries to assess the determinants of Tfpg, and for that we have taken the main factors as industrial remuneration, investment in ICT and skill development. So I'll explain the theoretical model in a very short way. The starting point is the production function that we take, and the derivations that we get. These are very tedious derivations, so I have skipped the part of deriving, but I have just kept the final equation that we get. So when we consider imperfect competition in only the product market, so we get the we can decompose the residual, that is the Solos residual, into three parts. So that the one part which is seen in this equation is LER, which basically the coefficient of which throws up the market price.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rama. Can you speak closer to the mic, because
is it now better, sir?
there is some lot of audio disturbance. Yeah, it is better, certainly.
It is better.
So
Okay.
if you, I think some paper shuffling is coming, some noise is coming, which is disturbing the flow of your, So
Okay.
yeah, now it's
Okay.
clear. So you go ahead and speak
All
a
right.
bit loudly, closer to the mic. Yeah.
All right. All right. So, we can decompose the Solos residual into three parts. The one which gives us the price marker, the other, the second term, which gives us the scale, scale of economy, and the third part is the actual residual, which basically signifies the total factor productivity left after taking account of these imperfections. With labor market imperfections, using the efficient bargaining model, we arrive at the equation which is given here, which further decomposes the Solos residual and gives the parameter of bargaining power. So bargaining power is basically, so these are the estimated parameters which we get from running the Solos residual and decomposing it into the parts that we have just defined. So I have kept the equation here also again for the better understanding of the coefficients. So the coefficients enable us to calculate price markup, bargaining power, scale factor, lambda, and TFPG, which is the fourth term in the equation. So basically, we have estimated this equation for the data from which we have extracted from annual survey of industries for the period of 2008-9 to 2017-18. This has been calculated at NIC 3-digit level. We have considered 65 industries in that, and the methodology that we have adopted for estimating the TFP empirically is basically to overcome the endogeneity bias in total factor productivity and the choice of inputs through the Levinson-Perrin framework, because productivity shocks lead to the firms to respond by altering the choice of inputs, which creates a endogeneity bias in the framework,
and thereby the choice of inputs gets affected through the rational behavior of the firms, which respond to changes in the choice of inputs. So the Levinson-Perrin framework allows us to correct for this heterogeneity bias, whereby the TFP calculations have been derived. So we have estimated two models without time dummies. So the equation that I just mentioned, which decomposes the SR, the Solar's residual, and model 2 looks at the impact of with the time dummies. We can look at the impact of time on bargaining power and markup. So we'll be explaining the trends later on. So 2009 to 2013 and 14 to 17. So we've taken the midpoint to divide the time series. So findings, I'll just come to the findings straight away. Using these equations, first the data description is given in this table. The average growth rate of real industry output for the overall sample is 3.7% for the period 2008-9 to 17-18. Capital increased at an annual average growth rate of 3.3%, while labor growth was registered at 2.5%. The intermediate inputs and fuel expenses, which is the choice of inputs that we have referred to here and used it in the calculations to overcome the heterogeneity bias, both witnessed an overall growth rate of 5% each. And the solar residual, as given in the last row, the solar residual was around 2.3% over a period of 10 years that we have considered. Coming to the estimation results, these are the estimated coefficients from the empirical analysis that we have run. So the first three relate to the coefficients, and the second, the last two columns relate to the parameters that we have calculated in terms of the bargaining power and markup. So from this this empirical equation and the empirical estimates, we have been able to calculate the TFPG estimates and industry group wise parameters, which are bargaining power and price markup. And the second phase, in the second phase, we have looked at the effect of agglomeration on TFPG. So the industry groups have been formed using the NIC 3 digits, and 15 industry groups have been formed. So these are the groupings and the NIC codes which fall into each category of industries. So these are 15 industries for which calculations have been done. So coming to the comparison and the findings now. So we can see here the comparison of the TFPG estimated from our model and the Solos residual have been compared. For 2009-10 to 2015-16, the TFPG is higher than the Solo residual. There has been a dip in the productivity growth in the recent years for the overall period, for the overall manufacturing sector in India. And if we look at the industry, heterogeneity in the industry in terms of productivity, you can see the variation of the TFPG which has occurred. The aggregate TFPG over time has been very high for certain sectors such as automobile, plastics, instrument and devices, low for pharmaceuticals, electricity, electronics, leather and food, negative or it has remained stagnant for many industries such as glass and non-metallic industry, wood and paper, chemicals, basic metal and products, petroleum products, textile and clothing, and rubber. So this is the range of the productivity growth that we have seen. If we look at the time periods, if we compare the time periods industry-wise, we see that the fall in TFPG from 2.42, if you look at the last row, 2.42 has fallen to negative of 0.29. So this in stagnation in productivity has come from certain sectors which were growing very high in the initial time period that we have seen, and there has been an erosion of productivity in some of these industries, which has actually caused the overall productivity to stagnate. So these are some of the important sectors like automobile, instrument devices, rubber, plastic, leather and footwear, and other manufacturing, among others. But these are the prominent sectors which have actually seen a massive erosion in their productivity. And this explains the trend that we see in the overall productivity. So this is the summary that I have already gone through. I'll come to the second part, where we have been able to calculate the parameters of bargaining power and markup. So the markup for the industry, the 15 industry groups are given in this graph. And if we take the same sequence, the bargaining power has been very volatile in these across the industries. So from these, we have the following observations. So with higher demand in goods market, bargaining power tends to coexist with higher markups, because the firms which are gaining profits tend to sustain higher wages to avoid conflict costs with workers. So in many industry groups in our sample, we have identified some of the industries which have experienced both high markup and high bargaining power. So high markup and high bargaining power is related to the overall aggregate bargaining power and the aggregate markup which we so we use those thresholds to calculate high and low markup industries. So these industries are basically electric equipments, automobile, food and beverages, and wood and furniture. So basically high markup and the coexistence of these implies that labor is able to bargain and get a better wage deal in industries that have relatively higher economic rents in terms of higher markups. So the second observation from our estimates, we have seen that the bargaining power was higher for the latter half of our study period, that is 2014 to 17, than for the earlier time period. On the other hand, there was a decline in markup overall from 2.7 to 2.0. This can be related to the post 2008 era, where the share of wages in gross value added has actually increased from 9.9% to 13.1% in 2017-18, according to the ASI data. So there has actually been the share of wages which has gone up is actually can be explained through the bargaining power being higher in the period given that we have considered. The second phase of our analysis has been to look at the determinants of TFPG, and to discuss this, I would call upon Dr. Mahua to kindly do the presentation for 5 minutes. Mahua, over to you, please.
Thank you, Rama. I'll just carry over what Rama has just said. Now, this in this section, we had Rama, please, next slide. Yeah. This section, we have dealt with the impact of industry level factors on TFPG, for which we have examined the impact of industrial agglomeration on total factor productivity in case of organized manufacturing sector. The study period is the same, 2008 to 2017-18. Now, we know that agglomeration refers to the concentration of economic activity in which generates positive effects of productivity of economic units located in the region. So also this LAL study, which had been studied in 2001, they had dealt with the source of productivity growth, where they have described the agglomeration positivity factor due to improved access to market centers, intra-industry linkages, and through inter-industry urbanization at regional level. So all these benefits of agglomeration economies quoted above contributes towards enhanced total factor productivity. However, there may be agglomeration diseconomies also as well, which is due to congestion, fierce competition, high rents for land, and intense competition in input and output market. So hence there are reasons to study and establish the linkage between productivity and agglomeration. So hence our study deserves special mention here. So here we had calculated the measurement of agglomeration through the popular measured index, that is Ellison and Glaser framework. Earlier studies, they had always mentioned about the urbanization agglomeration economy study. They had gone through localization and urbanization economies, but in our study we had measured the agglomeration as a missing link and applied this measurement and had done the calculation and estimation part. These classical measures like Gini index and location coefficient, they are criticized in measuring spatial inequality as they are not derived from theoretical choice models. Hence, they fail to capture the impact of industrial structure. And this EG index, which we had calculated, they have been calculated across industries at 3-digit level for the years 2008 to 2017. And this next slide, please. Then we had shown this agglomeration index. There are some we find evidence of spatial concentration for food products and beverages and transport and chemicals for the period 2008 to 17. There is moderate concentration for the industries like metals, electronics and electricals, and for textiles and leather sectors, we did not exhibit any patterns of spatial concentration during the period under the study. Because this EG index, their range varies between 0.05 and if the measurement index shows the value range between 0.05, greater than 0.05, there are spatial concentration. Industries are spatially concentrated, high spatial concentration, and the range between 0.02 and 0.05, they are considered as moderately concentration, spatially concentration industries. And if the value of this EG index is less than 0.02, they don't exhibit any patterns of spatial concentration. So then what we did was we had done the analysis of to show the impact of industrial agglomeration on TFPG across industries. What we had done is this estimation results we are showing here. The impact of market imperfection adjusted TFPG is the dependent variable. And further, what we had done was we had in the industries at NIC 3-digit level have been divided into two classes based on their technology intensity as per OECD classification. And first model, we had captured the effect of agglomeration using only the EG index. And if we want to show the impact, if the linkage between productivity and EG index varies over various types of classes, which we had done according to the technology intensity classes, then we had included the interactive terms. And here we had the second equation. Model captures the square of index, implying the because we had tested the non-linearity among the relationship between the productivity and EG agglomeration index. Now for this high square term, if it is coming negative, that means there is these economies of agglomeration in terms of congestion and urbanization. For model 3, we had in included other industry statistics which affects the TFPG, like skill and contractual labor. Now, skill, we had defined the level of skill in terms of employment categories, which can be employment categories due to some limitations for other data. So whatever we had taken in this exercise is the relative share between the number of supervisory and managerial employees and the workers. The ratio, this ratio we have taken as a measure for skill. And this, the presence of skilled variable enables firms to raise their productivity, and thus we expect a positive relation of this variable with TFPG. The other variable which we had taken for the third model was the contractual labor. Now, the contractual labor, this may impact TFPG because we can see that with the growing reliance of the organized manufacturing sector in informal contractual workers, it has been observed that the share of contractual workers in total number of workers have risen over time. Now, based on this trend, we can generalize and we can try to examine whether this trend has helped industries to gain in terms of raising the total factor productivity or not. Now, we assert that greater contractualization may have been detrimental effect to the overall productivity, as informalization of employment leads to number of challenges. Now, the fourth model which we had considered was we had included this ICT, which is information and communication technology variables in industries. And ICT, we know they play a very crucial role in transforming the growth strategy and performance over time in the Indian industry. Now, the effect of ICT investments can have two ways of affecting the firm's performance. First is the direct effect which of ICT on growth, which includes manufacturing, and the second effect is the indirect, which is indirect in nature, which affects total factor productivity. We had measured this ICT as a share as an investment made under fixed capital category for the computer equipment. The role of ICT have a lagged effect because the gains from changes in technology generate a lagged effect in time in terms of productivity gains. So we had include this lag terms in this model. Now, the findings, when we considered the industry classes based on their technology intensity classification, we find that a significant positive impact of agglomeration on productivity for the medium and high technology industries, which includes automobile, pharmaceuticals, electrical equipments, wiring, cables, and machinery. Now, the effect of ICT share on this productivity showed a lagged effect, as the coefficient of 2-year lags shows a statistically significant positive impact on productivity. The delayed effects of adoption to IT by the manufacturing industry on their productivity can be seen from our results. Last one is impact of skill on productivity growth is positive, but not significant, while that of contractual labor has become negative in our study. Now, these may be due to the heterogeneity in industries. The coefficients may not be significant. We need to look at the sectoral levels also, but due to loss of degrees of freedom, we have not taken dummies here. Now, I'll ask Rama to just conclude whatever our findings. And
thank you, Mahua. So in conclusion, we have observed the solid residual underestimates productivity growth by ignoring market imperfections, a stagnant productivity growth over 10-year period owing to productivity erosion in automobile, instrument devices, rubber and leather industries. Agglomeration economies have benefited mostly the medium high technology industries such as automobiles, pharma, electric components and machinery. And greater investment in digitization by industries reaps benefits in terms of enhanced productivity. In terms of policy implications, although low technology industries show very high agglomeration in our data, benefits in terms of higher productivity are absent. So we need to change the industrial policies to cater to specific needs This would require actually sectoral analysis, which is beyond the scope of our study. So we are just making a small statement regarding the changes in the industrial policy, and of course, adoption to greater digital technologies by low technology industries would also help in greatly enhancing productivity. Thank you so much for this listening to us, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rama and Mahua, for a very comprehensive presentation of your paper. And I see there are a lot of analysis done and conclusions. So without any further ado, let me move to our. We have today some of the best minds on productivity with us, including Professor Goldar, who has, I'm sure this audience knows. He has been at Institute of Economic Growth, and he is known in India as a doyen of productivity studies. So that sums it up, I think, quite well when you say doyen of productivity studies. So with that, let me hand over to Professor Goldar and what he has to say on this presentation and any other insights he wants to bring to this discussion. Over to you, Professor Goldar.
Thank you very much. I have a presentation.
Okay.
I'm not able to get okay. Slideshow.
Press F5. F5.
F5.
F5. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's these are hiding all these keys. I cannot see the if I'm pressing F5, but nothing is happening. Anyway,
click on that button, sir. Give me the access.
Yeah, this is visible.
It's visible enough, sir. If you
no, but I will do something.
Okay, it's full screen he wants.
The right bottom side also you can click the presentation mode. The right bottom side.
That is what I'm trying to get. But unfortunately, there is a block here of the screens coming, and I cannot go reach there.
With this, I think you can go, sir. Otherwise,
anyway. So anyway, this is one problem I'm facing. It's fine. I will. So
it's okay. It's okay. It's quite visible. Yeah.
Let me see if I can do something about it. No.
So simply press F5.
I have done that. I have done that. Nothing is happening. Anyway, it's okay. So this I comment on this paper. I will be more giving suggestions. Also, I'll have some comments, but it's more about the suggestions and what can be done and how can the work be improved. Plus my insight into this. Just 1 minute. Let me try to see if I can do anything about it. No, somehow.
In the meantime, if you can send to them, then they can also process it.
Now it's okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I've been able to do it now. Okay. So I compliment the researchers for the work done. Great deal of effort has gone in preparing the 65 3-digit industry data set, carrying out the analysis, and it makes a contribution. And as in the paper, it was mentioned that bulk of the past research has used the growth accounting methodology, which is based on the neoclassical economic theory, assuming competitive markets and constant returns to scale, which is not tenable in the developing country conditions. And the paper uses a methodology that is not bound by the neoclassical theory. Now, this is roughly what you can see. In the TFP growth rate is actually growth rate in output minus growth rate in total input. What is growth rate in total input? It is the growth rate of different inputs combined together make the growth rate in total input. So it is the growth rate in inputs multiplied by their respective elasticities. That is elasticity of output with respect to each input. Now, in growth accounting, we assume the elasticity to be equal to be the income share because we assume constant returns to scale and competitive market. And other methodologies are implicitly creating those elasticities in an alternative way, which need not be equal to the income share. This is, in my mind, basically what is happening in the non-neoclassical framework. Now, there are several possibilities there. One possibility is to simply estimate a production function and use the parameters of the production function directly. For example, in Kathuria, Rajesh Raj, Kunal Sen paper in their 2014, they are using this linear Levinson-Petrin method to the state level data and creating the elasticities and from there computing the productivity. Or in Goldar, Chawla, Behra 2020 or Goldar 2020, both papers, one at firm level, one at plant level. It is actually production function being estimated. So these studies are not assuming competitive market or equilibrium. They are directly estimating a production function and from there creating the productivity. But this paper, the approach it has taken is that it incorporates the markup and bargaining power into the. And now, earlier study done in this area is by Maiti, 2013, 2009. There may be more studies in this. Now, in the Maiti work, he shows that when the product and factor market distortions are taken into account, the growth accounting is actually giving a bigger number than the true number. That is, after his estimate of TFP is only half. So for example, from the solo residual is 1%, he is getting only 0.5%. I noticed that in this paper, the opposite is happening. Solo residual is a little smaller than the number that is being estimated. Also, returns to scale estimated is about 1.8 to 2.2, which this is a bit on the high side. So I suggest that in the paper, they should also provide the returns to scale estimate and compare what is the implicit returns to scale estimate for the estimates, TFP estimate there. Maiti has used 2-digit industry data for 15 states. If for 65 industries we could do, they could do the analysis that use the state-wise data, the analysis will be much richer. But the work involved is huge. And the problem is that state-wise data of ASI 3-digit level shows high, large volatility. So that's the problem. The positive effect of ICT on productivity has been found in a large number of studies. For India, for example, in Krishna 2020 and Goldar 2020, Goldar, my paper uses plant level data, and Professor Krishna and others, the whole team, Clem's team, use the industry level data. And we find a significant positive effect of ICT on productivity. Similarly, in agglomeration, a paper by Ramachandran, Reddy and Sasidharan has shown that agglomeration has a strong positive effect on the productivity of plants. They have used the plant level data of ASI. Why I'm mentioning this is that they cover more or less the same ground as this paper does in terms of the effect of EG and ICT on them.
Yes.
Now you can see that there can be different types of models. Level of TFP depends on EG and ICT. Therefore, change in TFP depends on change in EG and change in ICT. Or you can write TFP depends on EG and ICT and previous year's TFP. These are the type of models, for example, in the Professor Krishna, my paper, or the Sasidharan paper. But in this paper, what is happening is change in TFP depends on EG and ICT. Now, this is difficult to implement really. And the explanatory power of this sort of models is generally low. And this has been considerable difficulty. I also have another problem. If delta TFP is integrated of order 0, but EG and ICT are not integrated of order 0, they are generally non-stationary, likely to be. So there's a problem of finding co-integration in this sort of model. On the other hand, I noticed that Goldar and Kumari 2003 and in developing economies and my own paper in 1986, I had used a model similar to this. But now that looking back, one needs to think whether this is the right approach to take. Now, it is unclear from table 2 of the paper if the fixed effects model has been applied or random effects model has been applied or OLS has been applied, but seems to be the model. But it is better to allow for industry differences by allowing industry dummies or fixed effects. So either change in growth or level of TFP. So my suggestion would be that fixed model should be applied. And if there is an issue of endogeneity, that is agglomeration leads to productivity and productivity also helps in agglomeration, then the right model is the generalized method of moments, GMM. That is the right estimator. Incidentally, in the Sasidharan paper, they have used GMM. Now, there are two concepts of agglomeration. One concept is plants of different industries are getting together in one region and thereby productivity is benefiting all industries of the region. Concept 2 is one industry is getting concentrated in some regions of the country and therefore providing benefits to that industry. Now, the concept 1 is used in Ramachandran Reddy and Sasidharan. They are thinking of this. In one particular district, they have done the analysis at district level. Many industries are coming together, so everybody is winning. But concept 2 is used in this paper, where chemical industry is getting concentrated in one industry. So it seems to me that there are three alternatives. TFP of jth industry in Rth region depends on EG of the Rth regions. TFP of jth industry depends on EG of jth industry. This is the model being used in the paper. But there is a third possibility. TFP of jth industry in Rth region depends on EG of the Rth region and EG of the jth industry. So this is a suggestion, this is a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Goldar. It could not have been better. I think Doyen understands what precisely has been done and what are the limitations and how it can be improved. So you have done that, and I'm sure my colleagues would have found your suggestions very, very, very useful. And I'm sure they will use your suggestions to improve the paper. And in the end, we will have a very solid paper coming out because of your, very detailed suggestions. Now, let me turn to our second panelist, Professor Dev Kusum Das. And as I earlier was saying, Professor Dev Kusum Das has also continued this tradition started by Professor K.L. Krishna, continued by Professor Goldar, and he follows in that tradition of studies on productivity growth, and he chairs the CLAMS group. This is a global, productivity scholars group running from United States, and so he chairs this for Asia, and Dev Kusum has earlier spoken in one of our seminars also. So attending this webinar. So over to you, Dev Kusum.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. And yes, it is an interesting paper. Maybe some of my comments might, Professor Goldar has, of course, commented on the theoretical issues, on the econometric issues, and I have more of queries which will help me better understand the paper or help the authors to better equip themselves. So I'll put one or two important queries that I have. Is that the time period is mentioned 2008-9 to 2000 whatever. My first query is that is it a conscious decision to start from 2008-9 post economic what you call global financial crisis, or is it just the availability of data which is dictating? Because I read the paper, I couldn't find any discussion on what is the rationale behind the what you call the choosing of the period. Of course, financial crisis and all these things are mentioned in this thing. So that is one, because as per my understanding is that in productivity studies, the time period becomes very important, whether you're taking a short period, whether you're taking a long period, immediate period, what is happening in pre-reform, post-reform, all those kinds of things. And everybody has a set of time period to consider. We work with the claims data, which is about a 30-year period, but that has its own merits and things like that. So one is that must have a story behind the choosing of the time period. Why is 2008 onwards very interesting for Indian economy? And how do you contextualize a study on productivity during this period, and what are the advantages of reading a study like that? My second query is that in this time period, there is Ict 2004, there is Ict 2008. So you mentioned Ict, but it is better if you mention which Ict are you following in the period, Ict 2008, Ict 2004, and is there any concordance needed across the data set and things like that. So, it's important that we talk about the Ict that you've used in ASI data. Okay, so these two are choice of period and Ict, and you in one of your tables you have a time period 2009, and on midway why are you choosing that midway? That also needs and if you want to present them in I'm not talking about the econometric results, in a tabular form, if you have to bring in 5 year like that, and all those kinds of things. My biggest problem with the paper is that a study on productivity with capital stock in a very, very, I should use the word, it has not been constructed adequately. You're just going, if I've understood, you're just going by the fixed, the ASI category that is given there. In the ASI data, you're using that. But that is something, if you were doing a study of labor intensity or industrial performance or somewhere or the other, and if you want to bring in your TFPG as a variable there, I can understand why you would not like to spend much time, because capital construction, whether it's perpetual inventory method, whether it's capital services and things like that, is time consuming. And a lot of work has to go into that. And, a study in 2021, going back to a frame of mind, which is 1970s and 80s, is really a little difficult to bear with. I mean, why should the authors, when the major focus of the study on productivity, not pay attention to capital service construction or capital stock construction or capital input construction? That is my major problem with this, because all the results that I look into capital TFPG or whatever, I have this constant worry that your capital has not been constructed adequately. Your capital has not been given due credence to what it belongs. So that is in my mind a big block right now in the study. No matter what results you get, I can always turn around and say that, hey, but you have not constructed your capital stock properly or your capital input. So I don't believe in any of those productivity results. Just to go to ASI and pick up that fixed assets number and do a productivity study is a bit difficult to talk about. And also, today you have in claims, for example, we have discarded capital stock and we are moving towards capital services, and it is doable if you're doing ASI. If you in this kind of block C of ASI gives you equipment, machinery, ICT, and all these kinds of things. It is not difficult. It is possible to enter into the block C and make a much better capital input construction. That is my first. The second is, again, you're talking about intermediate input, and you're talking about that Levinson and Oli method about investment or intermediate input. But in intermediate input, if I understand it correctly, and we work on that in the claims, is material, energy, and services. That together constitutes intermediate input. Why are you just taking material out of it and ignoring the other two from the ASI data? That's again an important point because you're placing emphasis on the word intermediate input or intermediate input as a conceptual issue now. And I haven't worked with these two methodologies, Oli and Peterson, but does it constrain you in any way to use a value-added based measure of TFP or measure of output? Or, I mean, is it necessary to always stick to value-added labor and capital, either Ole, Parkinson, or Levin-Peterson method? I mean, I'm not too sure, but maybe Professor Golder can highlight this better. Because as we started working on productivity, we've always learned that gross output is a better measure of productivity. Then gross output and KLEM, KLEM, which is available from ASI, and the KLEM's data give you KLEMS. I mean, unless the methodology determines that you stick around with value-added labor and capital in a study on productivity, that you need to consider. Why should you do that? And things like that. I looked at the econometric model, but the two of the issues that you're raising are very, very important today. ICT and skills, contract labor. Now, ICT, you know, if you're saying, I just heard you right now, you're saying ICT is something on capital, fixed capital. That's exactly the reason I'm saying if you look at block C of the ASI, you can actually get an ICT value there. ICT as an equipment within the capital assets, fixed assets. So when there is a data available, why will you not look that data up? And why would you look at first-hand proxies or second-hand proxies and things like that? And again, skill and contract labor are both very important from productivity point of view, and both are very important, I think, from labor productivity point of view, and of course also total factor productivity point of view. You know, you're just bringing in some kind of a proxy, some kind in the econometric work, but to substantiate your econometric results that you're saying about skill and contract labor, why don't you pick up the contract worker or some kind of ASI data on regular versus contract and things like that, and also give some idea of a background table in contract or skill and things like that. Yeah, the discussion is only in the econometric model. And certainly these ICT and skill and these merit a lot of, even if you're using it as a determinant of productivity growth in today's Indian economy, Indian industry, or Indian manufacturing context, these are extremely crucial aspect: digitalization, servitization of manufacturing, looking at contract labor usage in manufacturing, or looking at skill usage in that. You are making observations that higher skill and linking up with contract work. And I would have really liked to substantiate your econometric arguments, some data crunching from ASI on contract worker in industry, whether it's gone up, and associating them with skill and things like that. Because there is a lot of work of late going on in contract labor in India. I mean, some of my own work at ICRIAR with Jaivir Singh, and there is also a scholar by Ramrit Chore at Johns Hopkins University. He's doing phenomenal work on contract labor usage and things like that. Just go through some of his work on contract labor. Ramrit Chore at Johns Hopkins, and including some of, I think, one or two papers of ours at the ICRIAR on the jobs project would be relevant, because this is a section which needs to come out in the paper on productivity. I mean, every year there are thousands of papers in Indian context which come out in terms of productivity. So what are you bringing to the table in terms of new? I mean, I would certainly feel Ole and Parkinson or Levin-Peterson is a good enough. You're using a sophisticated methodology which doesn't bind you to growth accounting, but a little more critical assessment of growth accounting should have been brought to your paper. A little bit of critical assessment of, but because growth accounting, I understand perfect competition, those things, but growth accounting also gives you very interesting sources of economic growth, whether it's capital input, whether it's factor inputs, or it's TFP. It gives you industry origins of growth. It gives you industry origins of overall economic growth. It gives you industry origins of aggregate economic growth. It gives you sources of labor productivity. So, with its disadvantage, it also offers a certain very powerful way of looking at productivity. I completely agree that it's neoclassical perfect competition, but you can also have to look at the other side of it. So some comparisons those ways. I think the paper needs a section of including ICT, how you're measuring ICT. ICT at the aggregate economy level is easy to measure. ICT at the industry level, I'm not too sure if it's that easy other than using a proxy. So some amount of discussion on ICT intensity or ICT capital stock, some discussion on contract labor, and all of these should have been in the discussion. Just to interpret that my skill variable is saying this and not that, and I say this is skill variable and I relate it with contract labor is not enough today in a driver of productivity, because these are by themselves very strong issues. So you just can't let them go at an explanation of a econometric variable. You have to substantiate more on those. And my last comment seems that the paper was written in a bit of a hurry. It needs to tighten up a bit, because in the paper, just to, this is not towards a criticism, but took me a long time to figure out. You are mentioning Das et al. 2017 throughout the paper, but in the bibliography, there is no Das et al. You're mentioning Vishwanath Golder, K.L. Krishna, Dev Kushum Das, Irambam, and that way. I guess it happens if you're in a tight situation. So it took me a little while to think what are you trying, which paper are you trying to relate to? So it has to be tightened up a bit, and the review has to be made more contextualization. And of course, you can look at some of the Clem's working paper at CD. They give a good review of productivity in India and current literature and things like that. Overall, a good attempt, but needs to be substantially improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev Kusum. Again, I could not expect anything different from you. I mean, you live day, night into productivity studies, and so you can see through. And I'm sure my colleagues would have found your comments and suggestions also very useful, in addition to those made by Professor Golda. Now, let me turn to, because we have actually, the scheduled time is over, but we extend it as usual. And we have now Professor Vinish Katuria to continue this discussion. And I already introduced briefly Vinish. Vinish is a professor at the Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management Studies at IIT Bombay, and he has done a lot of work on knowledge spillovers, productivity spillovers from foreign, direct investment to domestic companies. And so let us see what Vinish comes up with on this paper. So Vinish, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Nagesh. Yeah, I think most of the points have been covered by Professor Goldar and Dev Kusum Das, but I have a few more points. So this is just a summary of what they have tried to do it. So they tried to attempt to analyze the role of market imperfection in both product and labor market in Indian organized manufacturing sector. And they have modified traditional TFP estimation, and model is based on theoretical framework of Hall, and which was later modified by Crepon and Abraham et al. And their data is from ASI data they have taken from 2008-9 to 2017-18, which is a 9-year period for 65 manufacturing industries, which they further aggregated to 15 broad sectors. So model also estimates the bargaining power and price market behavior and at the sectoral level. So 3 things they have tried to do it. One is estimating TFPG without market imperfections, then estimating TFPG with market imperfection, and then try to see the role of agglomeration, ICT, etc., on TFPG. And they told the results nicely, so I'll just skip that. Yeah, it's a good paper, so a lot of things have been attempted in that. So they want to account for both labor and product market imperfection, that is good. Then use the recent data also, and then the test for role of agglomeration through EG index and ICT. Now, a lot of comments and suggestions have been given, so there are few from my side also. The first concern is this the only framework to account for market imperfection? Now, so if there is any other framework, then you can compare the results. That is one thing. Now, there is an interesting paper which appeared in Journal of Applied Econometrics which have used, they also have modified a HAL framework, but is this Doubler and Maris paper, they have used unbalanced panel data to do something. I think it's worth trying to see what they have done. The second is why I think Dev Kusum Das has rightly asked this question. Why data from 2008 onward? There is no discussion on the choice of the period. Now, one can also do pre and post financial crisis. That there will be some justification at least. But picking only 2008 onwards, which was the right, which was the year of financial meltdown also, then it will create some issues basically in interpreting or justifying the choice. Now, there is a table 5 which talks about bargaining power, markup. Now, they may be changing over a period of time also. And you have 9 year of period. How they are changing? So it will be, reader will be more interested to know the change over a period of time of these two important imperfections. Now, EG index, which is a old, I'd say dark old horse in this kind of studies, has been used or first was given by both the authors in 1997. But after that, there has been a lot of criticism of the index itself. And there are two issues which has been highlighted. One is that it does not give statistical significance. Now, whether you will get some value, but how statistically significant is that index itself? But later on, there was a study by Casey and Smith. They tried to improve on it, giving some statistical inference to the value of it. And second issue is the boundary issue, because it will treat all the units symmetrically. So then someone suggested that one can use Moran's I to, together with EG index, come up with a better measure of agglomeration. Now, another, it is also not clear in the paper, how did you measure EG index? Did you use number of workers or did you use output? The moment you use the number of workers, now if the industry is highly capital intensive, then it will have a different connotation. But if you use output, then it will have a different connotation. Now, how to, I think original measure which was given, used that is for number of workers. So again, this issue has also been highlighted in the literature. Now, I was looking at your agglomeration measure of different industries. Can it change so drastically over a 9 year period? So, for example, there is an industry like 108 processing of, I think this industry is fish, or 266, which is electromedical equipments, or all the industries in 30 industry group, other transport equipment. And there is a huge change in the EG index. But there is no justification given why it is changing so rapidly. I don't think they can change that drastically unless something has happened. Some cross-tabulation between markups and bargaining power vis-a-vis EG. I mean, is there any relationship between the two or not? That also be useful for the reader, I think. Now, in the presentation, it was mentioned that you have regulatory changes which leads to institutional effect. Now, can we segregate the two, or there is some endogeneity issues? So that also has to be looked, I think, according to me, in your write-up, or are you trying to capture that? Another issue I found in the paper is that though you are number of places you are using EG, and Professor Goldar has also mentioned, but there is always a lead-lag relationship. Now, agglomeration today will not impact your productivity or X or Z immediately. There has to be some lead-lag relationship, which is totally neglected. And perhaps that may be the reason you are getting a negative sign of EG index when you when you run it or try to see the impact on Tfpg. And whether you take, now in one of your table, I'm forgetting the number, not table number, your N is same, whether you take 2 lakhs, whether you take 1 lakh, or whether that variable is not there. That cannot happen. I think some housekeeping you have to do properly. That number should be different. The moment you take 2 lakh of ICT, that number of observation can't be same. And when you do not have that variable, it means the number of observations should go up, but which is not. Now, I think you are trying to cover a lot many things. And this is my suggestion only, you keep first part separately, where you try to see the role of, you want to compute the imperfection, then comparing different methodologies which come up with these imperfections, how your results differ. And then do the second part, which is again different, trying to see the role of TFP, role of agglomeration or ICT, because even measuring ICT itself is a tricky task. Even EG, are you measuring it correctly or not? So a lot of issues are there in that. So if you keep it separately, then there can be two nice stories. So these are my comments. Yeah, thank you. On the whole, yeah, it's a nice paper, but again, a lot of things you have to do. You have to tidy up because a lot of mistakes are there in the paper. A lot of references you are citing not at the end, and vice versa. So I'll stop here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vinish, for sharing with us your suggestions and further, issues for improvement. And I'm sure that both the authors would have benefited a lot from the three sets of comments and suggestions. And I look forward to really a much improved version of paper after taking care of these. So let me, see if some of our participants want to make any comment. And I particularly notice Professor Suresh Agarwal is in the audience, and he has also been doing a lot of work on productivity and related issues. He is part of also the CLAMPS team. Professor Suresh Agarwal, if you want to make any comments, observations, or anything.
Thank you, Nagesh. I
Go
hope
ahead.
you can hear me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I have enjoyed this
Yes,
paper.
yes,
And
yes.
after the
Very
comments
much.
of the three experts who had the access to the paper, and I don't think I need to add anything right now. The authors already have too many comments to cope up with and introduce in their paper. So thank you. All the best to them. And if I have anything to add, I will send it by mail. Thank you. All the best to them.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you.
Any other participant? Any other member of the audience who wants to make any comments to the authors or in general about the paper or productivity, which is the theme of today's discussion? If none, I want to ask Rama and Mahua if they want to respond to some of the comments made or, for whatever they want to share at this.
Sir, I have one
Over
thing
to you,
to ask.
Rama.
Sir,
Sure.
sir, I am
Go
Sina.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sina.
Rama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, sir, I can comment few things. I will talk to them personally, but generally, I'm asking experts also can explain. Sir, if we are taking a skill theoretically it should be a positive effect. So when we don't have the positive impact or it is insignificant, so we are not going to interpret it. But because of the variable description or variable what we are exactly taking for the skill, that also it didn't mention. ICT also it should have a positive impact. So if it is not significant or it is insignificant, we have problem with our measurement or we are unable to capture it properly. So we need to take care of that. Theoretically, it should have a positive impact. So when we don't have the positive or insignificant, maybe we
All
have
right.
problem with our
Thank
measurement
you.
or something.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So everything which is, hypothesized doesn't turn up in the same manner in the empirical estimations. So obviously because of data errors, the measurement errors, the way we compute and all that. So I'm sure there could be 100 explanations for that. But
Nagesh, can I say,
sure,
just say a line
please.
here?
Yeah, please.
Now, on the relationship between ICT and productivity, there is a huge literature. And for India too, there have been some studies on the ICT and how ICT impacts the productivity. In this case of this paper, somehow these estimates that has been made, the positive effect has not come. But when the estimates are redone and the analysis is redone, perhaps a much stronger effect would be seen.
Very good. Thank you. Rama, you also are noticing there are a number of comments made in the chat box. So when you are, taking the floor now, if you wish to refer to any one of those, so over to you, Rama.
When we were having this panel set up, it was, feeling of having a PhD viva. So it has actually turned up like that, I feel. So thank you so much for all the panelists and giving us such detailed comments. I'll just have I'll answer some of the few queries that have been raised, and I'm sure we'll have to do a lot of improvements in this analysis. So, sir, as Professor Goldar had commented, sir, in the panel estimates, we have actually used the fixed effects, and your suggestions have been very well noted. We'll work on that. For Professor Devsundas, the problem that you have mentioned in terms of capital stock construction, since we had taken the NIC 3-digit level, the problem of estimating through the perpetual inventory method poses some problem in estimating capital. So that's why we stuck to the the older way of calculating the capital stock. Intermediate inputs, we have considered both material and fuel, but not energy, because in taking the real values, the price deflator would has some problems, and therefore we would consider that in the analysis later on. And third, the Levinson-Bertrand framework allows for the gross output to be used. So we would consider that also, if you, as you have suggested. ICT measure we have actually calculated from block C. So as they give the investment done in the different categories. So the category of computer machinery, computer and equipment has been actually taken from block C only, and we've taken it as a measure of as a ratio of total fixed effects, total fixed assets. Sorry, and the choice of time, it has been actually taken as post 2008 in order to see the effects of the crisis, as a lot of work has been done till pre financial crisis. So we thought of taking that as the time period for our data. And because there is a problem of NIC concordance, and due to the paucity of time, we need to have a concordance between NIC 2004 and 2008. In our analysis, we have used NIC 2008. So that's one clarification that you have suggested. So this is what. And for Professor Vinish, I think your suggestions are well taken, and the pre-post 2008 analysis would be a very apt way of looking at the total factor productivity, the trend in the productivity. And lastly, I think the suggestion on separating the two analysis, I think would give more weight to the deeper understanding of each one of them. So we have tried to take in a lot of analysis together. So we might come up with certain some more details in the first analysis as well as the second. So thank you so much for your suggestions. And any other if we have any other query, or over to you, so for this.
Thank you, Rama. Is Mawa, you want to add anything? You are muted.
You're mute. You're mute.
Sir, everything has been said already. So we think we have to improve the paper a lot, and then we can further do the things.
All right.
Sir, I would urge Dr. D.K. Das to give us some time for one-to-one meeting to get more clarification on a lot of aspects, because it would be really a value addition for our understanding.
Maybe I'll visit you one day in ISID.
Yeah, please, sir.
And
that
also
would be great.
my request also to Professor Goldar and Vinish also. Why not
Yes.
them too also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dev Kusum has been promising to visit us for a long time.
Yes.
Now
I will.
Please do it now,
I will
sir.
press
I
very
will.
hard.
I will. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Good.
Thank you so
So when
much.
he comes, you can sit with him, and also feel free to visit him also whenever he.
No, I think
can,
I will find out.
And-
Just send me an email. I will.
Yeah. Great. So very good. Thank you, all three of our panelists, for doing a great job. This is the purpose of the series of research webinars, because the technical work which is being done at the institute needs to be exposed to the peers, and unless the experts have gone through it and sort of vetted, it is not really seen rigorous enough. So in that tradition, that context, I think your contribution today has been really wonderful, and as expected, because I know the scholarship of all three of you, and I expected nothing less. So I'm very happy that detail of analytical things that you went into, very few anywhere in the world will ISID side from all of us. And to Rama and Mawa, I think you have a lot of very useful suggestions to improve the paper.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure once you incorporate some of these comments, it will in any journal anywhere. All right. So on that note, let me thank everyone who joined today, and we will continue this series of very rigorous research seminars. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Much.
Goldar Saab. Bye bye. Finish.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Bye.
Gulda, sir. Thank you, Ganesh Kathuria. Thank you, Dikita, sir.
Bye. Bye.